regardless of whether you're going to be mixing in a stand mixer or by hand, you're trying to achieve the same results. So what you're going to need obviously is your water or your liquid, your flours, sourdough starter, salt, any garnish. Today we're not going to add any garnish, we're going to keep it simple. Your water temperature should be warm, probably 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I always put the water in the bowl first because this is going to prevent the flour from caking on the bottom. I also do reserve probably about 10 to 20% of the water that I'm going to end up using in the final mix because the dough will become stronger over time if I reserve that water. I'm also going to reserve the salt. I will talk about that in a second. And starter is also kind of an option. So you can auto-lease with your starter, or you can choose to not auto-lease with the starter. Generally speaking, if I'm going to auto-lease for less than an hour, I will put the starter in with that auto-lease period. If I'm going to auto-lease for more than an hour, I will withhold that starter until after the auto-lease period. Okay, so water goes in, my sourdough starter goes in. Also, my bread flour, and today we'll be adding a little bit of rye flour. So all that goes in, and then you either mix by hand or mix with the machine just until all of the dry flour is absorbed. Should only take it a minute or so. Okay, so this is really all I need to start my auto-lease. Remember, the auto-lease is the period in which you're going to let the flour absorb water and start developing its own gluten structure. So with this, as I've mentioned before, you can kind of pull at it. It's very pockmarked, it's shaggy. It does not have a lot of strength or structure to it quite yet. But that's the whole point. The flour is going to absorb that water and develop its own structure. So for now, you're going to let this rest for 15 minutes at the very least, probably up to about 45 minutes to an hour. All right, so my dough is ready to final mix. I know that the auto-lease period is successful because as I pull at the dough now, you can see that there's very long gluten chains versus when I was pulling at it before, it just broke very readily. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is add my salt. We withheld salt because what salt does in a mix is, aside from season it and regulate your fermentation rate, it strengthens the ionic bonds between your gluten chains. Okay, so we withhold salt until we form those long gluten chains for this style bread. Okay, so I turn on the mixer, salt goes in. If you're doing this by hand, you'll really feel that it becomes very strong and very tight very quickly. Okay, now I'm going to turn up the speed and mix this until it's smooth and shiny. Should just take a few minutes. If you're doing this by hand, you're going to be squeezing at it and kind of folding it a little bit to develop that strength. Now, once I see that it becomes a bit smooth and strong, I'm going to start adding my reserved water, just a little bit at a time. Help it off here. All right, so my bread dough is ready. At this hydration, it took probably 5 or 6 minutes on a high to be able to mix this until it is done. I know that it's done because as it's rotating, it's really pulling away from the sides and really staying as one cohesive mass, okay? And then when I pull at it in the bowl, I'll take a chunk out. You can see that it's very smooth, very shiny, and then when I stretch it out, you can see through it doing that window pane test. Okay, so you can see the gluten structure like this. So this is the end of my final mix. Again, you can tell that it's smooth and shiny and strong. Now it's going to go into bulk fermentation for probably about 3 hours.